Hello students, this video is all about open economy macroeconomics. We are going to cover a basic concept. If you look at the textbook that is given to you by Mankiv, Professor Mankiv, Principles of Economics, this is chapter number 18 from the textbook and page number is 369. So if you are referring to the textbook available with you along with this video, it will be of great help to you. This topic cover up basic concept of open economy macroeconomics. Now when you say open economy, what does it mean? The topic that has been covered in the class primarily were mostly focusing on a closed economy model. We have not discussed much about export, import, FDI, FII. Today if you talk of any economy, we are living in a globalized world, and in a globalized world countries are quite interdependent. This interdependency comes up by way of flow of goods, we call it export and import, flow of money, that is FDI, FII, flow of labor, that is people moving from one country to another country in search of job. No country can live in isolation as of date, so we want to cover up the basic concept of macroeconomics applicable to open economy. First of the concept is international trade. Now when you say international trade, why two country actually gets into international trade? One country cannot have self-sufficiency because country may not be expert in producing all goods and services. Even if you can produce all goods and services, every goods and services has a different cost of production in different countries. It may happen that one country is good in producing agriculture product, given the natural environment, the labor kind of soil that we have. Other countries good in manufacturing technological product, keeping in mind the availability of technology, capital, manpower, skill set available to you. So every country has got certain kind of basic skills, resources, either man-made or natural resources, which makes them capable enough to produce certain amount of goods and services, certain kind of goods and services much more efficiently than the other countries can. And in this scenario, countries specializing in one product or few product where they got some sort of advantage in terms of producing that goods and services at bit lower cost. So what country is supposed to do? Country is supposed to manufacture goods and services which they are based at and then gets into international trade. Suppose my country is manufacturing agriculture product at a rate or cost much lower than your country, and your country can manufacture computer at a price or cost much lower than what my country can. In that scenario, it is advantageous for both of us to have some sort of specializations. So my country will manufacture agriculture product, your country can manufacture computers, and then we exchange goods and services. This is called international trade of goods and services. Now this kind of international trade can make everyone better off. The living standard of the people goes up because people are getting goods and services which otherwise are either not manufactured in a country, or even if they are manufactured at a higher cost. So international trade helps people to improve the living standard. Countries are producing goods and services where they got comparative advantage. So you can produce but relatively at a much lower rate that you have. This export and import gives the idea of what you call a trade balance. Countries are exporting, countries are also importing, and this export and import are not limited to two countries. A particular country is trading with the rest of the world in terms of export. So few countries you are importing goods and services from, the other bunch of countries you are exporting goods and services, and this export and import gives the concept of trade balance. See, your either export are more than import or imports are more than export. So this is called net export. So when you say net export, this is a concept which is equivalent to the value of country's export minus value of country's import. And trade balance is either by way of surplus or deficit or even a balanced rate. Now when you say trade surplus is the situation where your exports are more than import. So you are exporting goods and services worth rupees 100 crore or 100 billion, your imports are worth 80 billion. So you have a trade surplus. Now when you export goods and services worth rupees 100 billion, your country will get $100 billion in return by way of payment. And when you are importing goods and services worth rupees $80 billion, your country is supposed to pay those $80 billion. So your country end of the day will left with around 20 billion of surplus. That's why this is called trade surplus. Similarly, there can be a situation of trade deficit. In case of trade deficit, your exports are less than import. Your total imports are say $100 billion. Your exports are $80 billion. So when you import $100 billion, you are supposed to pay $100 billion to the rest of the world, and to pay that you need to export. Now if your exports are only $80 billion, so what happens is you have only $18 billion available to you, and then you have a deficit. You need to manage those $20 billion to be paid to rest of the world. And there are rare instances, of course, but there are instances of trade balance. Your exports and import are balancing. So your flow of goods and services gives you a trade balance, which can be either surplus or deficit or maybe a trade balance. Now, what are the factors that affect this international flow of goods and services? Now, this flow of goods and services are influenced by many factors. If you talk about few of those factors, number one, it is the taste and preference of the consumer. What kind of goods and services consumer in your country are interested in consuming? What are their preferences? And if those goods are not available in your country, people will import. And similarly, if foreigners, the rest of the world is interested in consuming goods and services which your country is manufacturing, okay, you have a better chance of exporting those goods and services to the rest of the world. Similarly, price is one of the factors as well. So if price of particular country for the particular product in a particular country is lower than the rest of the world will import it from you. Similarly, if home price are more than the global price or world price, people would like to import goods and services. So the price difference between goods and services across the country is the major influencing factor that we have. Similarly, you have a concept of foreign exchange rate. Now, foreign exchange rate in a simple term is the rate at which one currency is exchanged for other currencies. For example, $1 is equal to around 73 rupees in rupees. What does it mean? By paying $1, foreigners can import goods and services worth 73 rupees. And if Indian wants to import something, so for import of goods worth rupees $1, Indians have to pay around 73 rupees. This is called foreign exchange rate. So if foreign exchange rate depreciates, say $1 becomes say 80 rupees, then with the same dollar, foreigners will be in a position to import goods and services worth rupees 80 from India. What does it mean? It means Indian products have become cheaper for them, though MRP in Indian context has not changed. Similarly, if rupee appreciates to say around 65, with the same $1, foreigners will be able to import goods and services worth rupees 65. So because of change in foreign exchange rate, Indian products have become cheaper for them. Same scenario can happen with Indian market. When rupee depreciates, imported product becomes costlier for us. Or if rupee appreciates, imported product becomes cheaper for us. So foreign exchange rate is one of the major influencing factor affecting foreign trade. Similarly, income of the consumer, because to buy goods and services, what a consumer need is income, and as we have discussed, it is consumption theories. So if income abroad, say rest of the world, if there are consumer with a higher income, they would like to buy goods and services from rest of the world. Say for example, per capita income in US is much more than rest of the world. So what happens is, citizens in US are having higher income. When they have got higher income, they are consuming larger amount of goods and services. Few goods and services they are buying from their home countries, and few goods and services they are buying from foreign countries. So that is income factor within the local market as well as foreign market, which are affecting the international trade. Similarly, the cost of transportation. Now when you say cost of transportation, transportation is one of the cost component. So if transportation cost increases, the cost of product in the country also goes up. So the transportation cost between two countries or transporting goods and services, because we got various mediums of transportation available to us by way of air, by road or by sea route. So the transportation cost is added to the price of the product. So if transportation cost goes down, the foreign trade goes up. And similarly, there are government policies, because when there is a trade deficit, government has to manage with those $20 billion that government is looking at. So always government try to make sure that trade has to be in balance, and for that government comes up with the various policies by way of what you call export import policies, and we have EXIM policy in India. So if government want to reduce the amount of import, for example, government may put import duties. When import duties are imposed on a particular product, the price of product in the local market goes up and import goes down. Okay, similarly, there are other tools like import quotas, import restrictions imposed by government policies. So those government policies are the factor which are influencing. Similarly, nowadays most of the countries are entering into trade agreement. Recently, US President visiting India, we had a trade agreement for buying defense product. So any trade agreement between two countries results into international trade, and in order to increase the trade, countries are entering into a various trade agreement. So you have NAFTA, you have SAFTA, even a European Union that has started as a trade agreement. So trade agreements are also important factor influencing the international trade. Similarly, let's talk of flow of finance. Now, when you say flow of finance, what does it mean? Today, with the advancement of technology, money is also flowing from one country to another country. So that financial flow also comes up by way of foreign direct investment or foreign institutional investment also. So when you say flow of finance, basically we are talking about flow of capital. And when you say FDI, it is flow of long-term capital. When you say FII, it is flow of short-term capital. Now, financial flow are of two types. One, we call it inflow of capital. When you say inflow of capital, the rest of the world is interested in investing in your countries. So capital available in rest of the world is invested in a particular country, say India. So that inflow of foreign direct investment, inflow of foreign institutional investment that happens. Similarly, there is an outflow. Outflow means people from your countries are investing in rest of the world. So money moves from your country to another country by way of outflow of capital. And this difference between outflow of capital and inflow of capital gives you net capital inflow. Now when you say net capital inflow, it includes purchase of foreign assets by domestic residents minus purchase of domestic assets by the foreigners. So when you say domestic assets, what does it mean? Foreigners are investing in our country. When they invest in our country, they buy assets. If it is foreign direct investment, they buy real assets. And if it is FII, they buy financial assets. Similarly, Indian people are investing abroad, they are buying assets in the foreign countries. So it is FDI, Indians are buying real assets in foreign countries, or maybe by way of FII buying financial assets in rest of the countries. Now, what are the factors that influence this capital flow from one country to another countries? These are the listed in the screen. These are the four major important factors. Number one, real interest rate paid on foreign assets. Now, when you say real interest rate, it is the difference between nominal interest rates and inflation. If you recall the discussion that we had in the class, if I am investing say 100 rupees at the interest rate of 10%, after a year I'll have 103 coming to me. But if this during the period, if inflation rate is around 7%, the net benefit that comes to me is not 10%, it is only 3%, because goods and services which I can buy for 100 rupees a year before will cost me 107 rupees. where I've got 110 rupees. So net returns are not 10%, it is 3%. That's called real interest rates. So real interest rate is the interest rate between the difference between interest rates prevailing in the market and the inflation rate. Now when say foreigners, investors, they are looking at return, and those return, when they talk in terms of, they are not talking in terms of financial return only, they are talking in terms of real return. So if foreign assets, if real returns are higher, real interest rate is higher in foreign other countries, Indian public or people from the domestic countries would like to invest abroad. Similarly, if real interest rate in the domestic market are on higher side, you'll have inflow of capital coming to the countries because they want to take benefit out of it. Similarly, this flow of capital to large extent depends on risk, because when you are investing abroad, either by way of FDI or FII, you are also taking a lot of risk. Those risks are economic risk or political risk. The economic risk by way of the business cycle that they have, the GDP growth, the interest rate scenario, the policies, economic policies. Similarly, there are political risk by way of changing government policies. If government in the foreign country changes and then government changes the political regime, then you are also at risk. So economic and political risk are also influencing the capital outflow. If economic and political risk are lower, you will have a lot of inflow coming in. If risk goes up, there is a lot of outflow taking place. Similarly, government policies with regard to FDI and FII, because every government would like to have a lot of money coming from abroad because they are getting a lot of capital there, but it has a cost in terms of ownership of resources. So in order to control the FDI and FII, every government has certain kind of policies, and the policies are also one of the major factor influencing the inflow of capital and outflow. The rest of the topic will cover up in the next video. Have a safe day, keep safe. Thank you.